You're also going to be growing a whole value chain, seed supply, saplings, nurseries. So all the way down the value chain, you would be generating jobs, income in a rural local economy in Brazil.
So welcome to another episode of Move the Travel. This interview series are focusing on companies and individuals that are moving the money in the right direction. And this time we're going to talk about moving the money to protect the forest. And with me I have our amazing guest, Peter Harris, CEO and founder of TBN Atlantic Rainforest. Peter, you are the co-founder of this organization. Instead of me telling what it is, tell us, what are you doing? What's your mission?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for having me. A real pleasure to be here and share this with you. And really enjoyed some previous episodes of Move the Money. So it's really good to be here. At TBN Atlantic Rainforest, we are a habitat restoration and carbon removal company. So we're seeking to do very high quality habitat restoration, starting in the Atlantic forest in Brazil, which is where the company is from. And these are also very high quality carbon removal projects.
And how come you ended up here in Stockholm working on moving the money to protect this forest?
One of our other co-founders, Ingrid Westman, who's our sort of chief commercial officer, she's from here, so she has lots of connections in the local market. And we also see the Swedish and the greater Scandinavian and Northern European market as leading in lots of these fields. So it's an area we focus on seeking clients and investors.
And if you tell us a little bit about the format, you're not an investment fund, you're not looking for investors to invest in your company, you're looking for the money to be funneled into protecting the forest, right?
Absolutely. We are a project owner and developer. So we are trying to have a very short chain between our clients who are purchasing carbon credits or looking to restore habitat and the actual projects. So we will own and develop the projects. That is, we will purchase land and restore it to what it would have been before. So high diversity, only native species, habitat restoration. So we'll be growing rainforests.
Is it existing rainforest, or are you talking about kind of fix it like it was before?
Our focus is on removal. Whilst we, of course, acknowledge that reduction and avoidance is absolutely key, and that needs to be done as well. At the scale that needs to be done, I see that more as a government issue. For Brazil's case, the Brazilian government need to decide to protect what remains. What we can do as a private company is do habitat restoration. So there are millions of hectares of land in Brazil, which is very ripe, very profitable, very good for habitat restoration and carbon removal.
And the carbon removal, are you achieving that by protecting those?
No.
Or are you achieving it by restoration, planting more trees?
Yes.
I mean, how does the land look before you're buying it and improving it?
The area we are commencing in is the Atlantic forest, which is obviously secondary to the Amazon in people's minds, and slightly less well known, and quite a bit smaller, but it's still 1.3 million square kilometers. It's an enormous area. About 90% of this has already been degraded over the past 500 years since the European discovery, let's say, or invasion, whatever we want to call it. And most of that now has been converted to farmland or cities. I mean, Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, the major cities of Brazil are in this biome. But there are remnants there, 10, 15%, depending on who you talk to. And what there is also there is an awful lot of degraded farmland. So this is low quality farmland. It's not very productive. So you sometimes have one head of cattle a hectare today. So we are looking to take what today is cattle pasture. So there's grass and a few cows. Some of the land actually is abandoned. It's for sale. So we're purchasing from farmers. We're not working on land that has indigenous people or anything like that. This is farmland today. And we will take degraded farmland and then we'll convert it back with, as I mentioned, only native species, high diversity. You're talking over 80 species per hectare, looking to restore it as close as possible to the natural habitat it would have been before, which in that absorbs, removes a lot of carbon from the atmosphere.
And what is the plan long term? Is it just to let it be, or is it to do some forestry management?
We have, from the beginning, tried to build a model that we like to consider as greenwashing proof, very transparent. Of course, there are very good models out there, and I'm not going to criticize anyone else's model, but we are avoiding any kind of timber or other income sources. We want to keep it very clean so that the additionality of the project is secured. I'm worried that if I'm selling tropical hardwoods at a nice price in 20 years, that might be the reason I'm doing the business as opposed to the carbon removal.
And how can you guarantee that this is not going to happen in the future?
So purchasing the land
years from now.
Absolutely. We want to be able to look clients, investors, stakeholders in the eye and say, this is a forest and it will be a forest into perpetuity, permanence and durability in carbon terms, but also for the project. So we will own the land. That's number one. So we own and control the land. Our Brazilian company does. And that way, I'm not reliant on a third party who may change his mind, who may give the land to his son in 20 years. No, it's our land. And then also, we will convert this land into a national park. So there is a very good legal structure in Brazil where you can convert private land into a nature reserve, and it is then restricted under law and it cannot be changed.
So basically, it's a kind of a reversed real estate property development where you buy land and you make it possible to build houses on it. You kind of buy the land and you restore it, and you use the nature protection law in Brazil to protect it forever, basically.
Exactly.
And the farm you buy this land from, aren't you kind of threatening their way of living, make a living for themselves?
We would have to be extraordinarily successful, I would argue, before that would be the case. A local NGO, SOS Mater Atlantica, so say SOS Atlantic Forest, whose job it is to protect and restore this, they have a study, then they identified 15 million hectares of land that they said was target for restoration. And in their evaluation, that included that there was no leakage, you're not pushing farmers elsewhere, no loss, no material loss in food production. There's a lot of land available. The land we will be buying, the farmer wants to sell it. It's on the market. I could purchase the land, put cows on it and sell meat to McDonald's, and no one would say a word. It would just be a normal farm transaction. Like I could go and buy a farm in Sweden and I could grow sheep on it or whatever it is. What we propose to do is to take that land and restore it, which would, obviously you have the carbon removal. You have restoration in the UN top 5 biodiversity hotspots. You have amazing biodiversity benefits. You have the local climate benefits. You're also providing local jobs. I mean, 95% of our capex goes straight into the local economy.
And what kind of is the job? Planting the trees and...
Well, not only, it'd be everything. So our scientists are in Brazil. 99% of our staff are all in Brazil permanently. I mean, I am Brazilian, but I don't live there now. So our chief scientist and project developer, he's a Brazilian PhD in applied ecology, 20 plus years in the field. So you would have project developers, both restoration and carbon, people doing Vera stuff. You would then have project managers all the way down the chain to rural laborers planting physically or doing the restoration. Could be seeding, could be planting, could be enrichment or a combination thereof, depending. And then you're also going to be growing a whole value chain, seed supply, saplings, nurseries. So all the way down the value chain, you would be generating jobs, income in a rural local economy in Brazil.
So this, I am just on my mind, I have two questions around it. And the one is that it seems like it's something extremely good to restore nature and make money out of restoring the nature. It's clearly a win-win. And by that, also capture the carbon that we really need to draw down from the atmosphere. And instead of using big fans, you use trees and nature to...
And I think we need to do both.
To do the trick. I agree with you. We need all solutions on the table. But still, if you see Brazil, there's still a lot of, you chop down the forest to clear it, to make new land for meat production, illegal forest fires, etc.
Yeah.
This was a huge problem in Bolsonaro, but it's still a problem. It has not ceased to exist completely. Wouldn't one way reasoning will be to kind of protect the forests that are already there
Mm-hmm.
be burned down instead of restoring the forest that was burned down long ago.
Absolutely. I would put that in the same on the same situation as the fans and the nature-based. It's both. You have to do both, but we would argue that we can have a more direct, tangible impact as a now small private company doing what we're proposing to do. I can't personally go and protect the whole Amazon. That, as I said before, I think that's up to the Brazilian state. That biome level type of protection, I think needs to be done at a government level.
And maybe by making it an economy to restore it, it does make less sense to destroy it.
Yeah, I would hope so. And back to your original point about the money, yes, we do want to make money, but the idea is to make money to invest in more projects. We have a scalable cookie cutter model. So what we really want is to have dozens of these projects and be restoring at a meaningful level, both in terms of carbon and the...
And who is moving the money to you? Who's your clients?
The clients, well, our target clients are large corporates who have a net zero promise, who are probably quite public relations sensitive, those sorts of people.
And it's through the carbon credit system?
That is our primary financial model, because that is the nearest thing you have in the market to a fungible asset that people understand to an extent and can buy. But it's still not perfect. We'd love to talk about biodiversity, which we can, and we have a very strong, if people are willing to pay for that, or just habitat restoration. TBN is actually to be named. It's an acronym for to be named Atlantic Rainforest. So one of our other ideas, we'd love to have Volvo Atlantic Rainforest, IKEA Atlantic Rainforest.
So they are going to, through you, own the land?
They can't own the land, no. I mean, that's a technical detail, but you can't own the land as a foreign company. They would sponsor the project. We see it more as naming rights, like a stadium. Okay. Why have the Allianz Arena when you could have the Allianz Atlantic Forest, and you would be able to recognize all the benefits, not only the carbon.
Here in Sweden, it's actually a neighbor arena just where I live.
Oh, okay.
We had this big arena. Last year it was called Tile 2 Arena.
Okay.
Now it's called Tile 3 or Free.
Right.
And they paid a lot of money for that.
Exactly.
And paying for a forest seems to be something much more useful. So you get carbon credits when you buy this, and you get your name and fame.
Yes.
Hopefully.
And there would be an absolute beautiful story of a forest growing with all the biodiversity coming back and all the other benefits.
If you get this as a company, are you also getting something measurable for biodiversity as well?
That is a much more infant market than carbon. We are tracking a number of the sort of standards that are trying to, but as I see it now, it hasn't really coalesced onto one clear understanding of what a unit of biodiversity is. Personally, I'm not a proper scientist. I don't think you could do that in the same way. It's not a barrel of oil or an ounce of gold.
Count the number of, I don't know, squirrels.
Yes, or at a genetic level. There's so many ways to do it.
Yeah.
But we have, apart from our chief scientist in Brazil, who's the project planner, we have a scientific advisor at Imperial College London, who's also Brazilian. She's a PhD, has her own lab, and she studies diversity in broken habitats in the Atlantic forest. And so through her and various other people we've talked to over the years, we've looked into a lot of ways you can measure the animals returning. So bioacoustics is absolutely amazing nowadays. And you can do a baseline. So you go to your field one day, you put down a microphone, you go away, and you come back in a week. Or no, you don't even need to come back. Something records it and something identifies, and it says you've got some cows. You know, there was a vulture that flew over and the grass is going.
Maybe this is what you can give your investors as well.
Absolutely. So you would then measure it all the way through. Year one, you've planted, and we know the answer because there are dozens of projects you've seen. Invertebrates first, amphibians, birds, all come back very, very quickly.
You had some breakthrough in the carbon market, kind of legal global framework last COP meeting.
Yes.
Do you see that this will help you, or how does this new framework going to work for you?
We'll have to see how it plays out. Since Paris, what people forecast, I would say, hasn't really happened. And last year was, I think, we saw the market softening in that there are some big key, well-known people out there really buying and willing to buy quality. But there are many others who are sitting waiting, and I understand why, because the perceived risk of getting it wrong is I think sometimes worse than trying to do it and getting caught, as opposed to doing nothing at the moment. And am I hopeful that changes? Yes. Am I sure it will change? Not yet. But we are trying to always be ahead of that and ready for hopefully when that happens and people really want high quality greenwashing proof carbon.
And when you say greenwashing proof, there's have been some scandals in the carbon offset market, as you are aware of. Some that have been very fair, some where it actually is not black and white. Those things. And for the viewers that maybe not have followed this debate, when it comes to forest, capturing carbon with forest, you have a big risk. You have many risks, but one big risk is that what grows today in a hotter future can burn down tomorrow, and all the carbon will go up in the air again. Legally, you're going to protect the forest from being cut down and destroyed. But are you also doing protective job to make sure it's not going to actually be burned down because of the climate crisis?
Yes, certainly. To your first point about some scandals in the market, the only thing I would say is what market doesn't have scandals?
Absolutely. And what new market doesn't have?
So I don't think
maturity problem.
Yeah. So that would be the first thing I would say. The second thing is we've tried to build the model to avoid those issues as much as possible. I think most of the major issues that have been projects of avoidance and reduction. And there you have a huge issue around having to prove a counterfactual. You have to prove that it would have been chopped down. And that's one of the reasons we're avoiding protecting. Because there's not much investment.
Here you can see that land was degraded, now it's restored.
And we invested in it, and now there's a tree there, and we can measure it. There's no question about additionality.
Measure, I mean, you can see the tree, but how are you actually measuring the carbon removal from it?
The science of that is very well understood. There is a big scientific work around how much carbon will be restored by these forests, so you can forecast and project this quite accurately. Then once you're specifically on a site and you actually do a project development document for that site, and you know the height, you know the aspects of the site, the rainfall, the sunlight, everything, you can get more accurate, and you know what you're going to plant and when you're going to plant it. And then you measure it as it goes. And I mean, to some extent, it's still sometimes a case of putting a tape measure around a tree at breast height and then doing a calculation about how much carbon is in there. But that is well understood, relatively simple science. And then there are multiple independent third parties who can measure this today with LiDAR, radar, satellite, all sorts of technologies. So you'd be looking to do a Vera or Gold or one of the respected standards, plus some independent third party verification.
And if it burns down?
Again, we would look to minimize that as much as possible. My prior day job was in risk management and insurance broking. And I have actually worked with forestry. So we will own the land. We would manage it like a farmer. So there will be fire protection there. There will be people on the land. This is not a forest sitting out in the middle of nowhere, just waiting to be burned down. The Atlantic rainforest is still very wet. It does not catch fire. It doesn't spontaneously combust. It's not California.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yes, well, I think we'll all be in a much bigger problem if this area turns into that sort of southern Spain or something. So you have to go and pretty much pour petrol on it and light it. It's not, someone doesn't drive past and throw a cigarette out the window and you lose thousands of hectares. So it would be managed. There would be fire protections. It's not managed like a commercial forest because you want to let the biodiversity grow, but you are there looking after it. And making sure that it doesn't burn down. And then also there is ways to insure so that you can replant. So there are more and more advanced risk management and insurance products to protect.
We actually had previous one, we don't have time. I forgot the name now, but it's a company that are starting to insure the providers of carbon.
Okay, KITA? KITA?
Something else, I think.
There are a few out there now.
So that the ones that are buying your service are guaranteed that they are going to get carbon removal.
Yes.
Even if you fail, the forest burn down or whatever. And that makes it very reliable, because if the insurance company approve you, you're kind of vetted and and the companies moving the money to fix it.
No
So
investment
guaranteed.
project has no risk.
So how are you working together with someone doing those things?
We've built in, because my background in the insurance industry,
Okay, so
I know all these people. We've built this into our model, yes.
Okay, so that's part of the...
Yes, there's the availability of an insurance wrap. I mean, we can have it for ourselves, as you can do it for the producer, you can do it for the off-taker, you can do non-delivery risk. The fire or windstorm is much more basic. But for example, when we looked into this, the cost of the insurance for fire was very low. Yeah. Because these guys know they do commercial forestry in this area, eucalyptus, pine, in the Atlantic forest, and they don't have many fires. So when we went to them and said, right, I've got this forest here, it's going to cost this is where it is, can you please give me an estimation for our calculations of what it would cost to insure it? They gave us a very low number.
You as an organization are quite new.
Well, we're sort of a COVID project. We've spent about 4 years building this product, but yes.
But you have started to provide a service quite recently, or?
Yes.
Yes. And, but you have big ambition.
Absolutely.
So what kind of scale are we talking about? How much are you protecting now? And what do you think you will do 4 years in the future from now?
Currently actually secured, we have a minor proof of concept project, a pilot project. We have a flagship project, which is around 3,000 hectares. So that's getting to a decent scale, but our ambitions go way beyond that. I mean, if people are willing to pay for high quality carbon to really do offsetting like they've said they are, as per the SBTI or as per their Paris or their net zero promise, then, and or are interested in the biodiversity or the naming rights, then it's entirely scalable. I mean, and beyond Brazil, we're starting Atlantic Forest, which is the safest place in Brazil to do this. In many terms, infrastructure, rule of law, land rights. The Amazon is obviously a very big opportunity, but it's much more complicated in the north of Brazil, all of those things. But there's the Amazon there. But I've talked to Restore Europe, organization who look at rewilding Europe here. They say that roughly 1 million hectares of farmland are abandoned in Europe every year. You could do it here.
Yeah, so this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
What are your main obstacles from succeeding with what you do?
At the moment, because this is a voluntary market and it's not yet stable, and all these questions around a carbon ton, you can have an avoidance ton from putting up a windmill, you can have a reduction ton from protecting a forest, you can have a direct air capture ton, you can have one of my tons.
Yeah, and it's different prices.
Well, it's different prices, and they're not. It's not really a fungible. It's not like buying a barrel of oil,
no.
And it's hard for people to get their head around. And then they say, no one really says, well, do I buy that one or that one? So I think there's a lot of uncertainty and insecurity in the market, which means it's difficult for investors or off-takers to make a commitment.
And what's the solution for that?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, according to Antonio Guterres, after Paris, we need to do everything, everywhere, all at once. So we believe, and I believe it will happen one way or another, that habitat restoration is a very key part of that. And it comes with these lovely co-benefits that you don't get from a windmill or similarly. So the solution is for people to support what is a growing industry that needs support at this moment, like all growing industries, like solar did, like wind did, like electric vehicles did, when they're in their infancy and they're not quite doing what everyone wants, but knowing that they're part of what we say we want to be doing and putting their money where their mouth is.
And if we talk about the cost of protecting the forest or restoring the forest, or translated in removing 1 ton of carbon, do you have like a list price, or how does it work?
We have a very transparent, ground up cost plus model. So we're very open with clients and stakeholders of what forms our cost, which is obviously the CapEx to purchase the land and to implement the project. Those are the two major bits. And then another one of the big issues is you kind of need them up front. It looks a lot like a renewable power, a windmill project. You need to build it first, and then it's standing there, and then it produces megawatt hours in the windmill's case, tons of carbon in our case, with a very low cost base for many years. But it's quite difficult because you need all the money up front. You need to build it first, and you need to own the land. Our scale then, it very much depends, because the forest I mean, you can measure it out 100 years of carbon growth. If you take the 100-year production and sort of divide it back into what you spent, your unit cost is very low, even with a nice margin. But no one thinks about 100-year contracts. How many companies were around 100 years ago? So the answer to that's very difficult. It's sort of how long is a piece of string. But if you look at, we are 10% of the cost of a direct air capture, but we're at the top end of a cost of most nature-based.
But how does it work? Do I, as a client of yours, pay you money and I get the carbon offset certificate as a dividend year after year, or how is it structured?
No, that could be the model, but the primary model is an offtake agreement. So you are a corporate who knows he has to buy X tons of carbon for the next 10 years because you've made a 2040 net zero promise. You made that promise.
There's a lot of promise out there.
A lot of promise out there. You're reducing your scope as much as as much as you can, but there's the unabatable, whatever it is. You've got to buy some carbon credits. So you want to secure high quality credits. You want to have a lovely forest. You can tell all your employees and their families and all your customers that you've built. You would sign an offtake agreement with us. So you don't pay us up front. You commit to purchase the tons at a year on a every year.
It's like investing in
20,000
a private
tons.
equity fund where you give some money up front and you...
No, not like that,
no. No, not like that.
No, more like a power purchase agreement.
Okay.
You agree to purchase carbon off us at a price every year for 10 years, say.
And the price is fixed already now?
Yeah, we negotiate the price. And then with that, I go to the bank and I say, I've already got a lovely Swedish corporate who've signed an offtake agreement. Please fund my project for me.
I see.
And we have the banks lined up. They all love it. They all want it, but they need the commitment from the buyer.
So you are getting the finance up front because you have a long-time contract with your clients?
Yes.
So how are you going to get a lot of more clients? How are we going to move the money to you?
That is the...
What do you need? I mean, the market is what it is. What do you need? Is it to educate the market, or is it to kind of promote, do the classic sales work, or what are you doing to scale your business currently? What's your strategy?
Well, we're seeking off-takers. So we're looking for corporates who are willing to support, to come in early and probably at a smaller scale. We are convinced that once you've done this once and you've shown it, because everyone wants to see a bit of track record. And whilst we have an amazing track record in our scientific team of doing these projects, it's not a track record of us as TBN. Now we have obviously peers and competitors, some of whom have already launched with some great projects, so that there are those companies out there. But at the moment, it's a handful. It's few and far between who are actually committing at that early stage to ferment the market.
I think you have this interesting add-on to name your land, etc. You also have all the biodiversity that you can actually see on the ground. One thing that I heard a lot about from a lot of our partners is that in order to funnel the money into the solutions, they need to get something back that will make the investment worth it.
Yes.
And of course, here they need to deliver on their carbon, on their promises and pledges, etc. But I think there's a potential to help them communicate what they're actually doing on the ground with you. And I'm going to surprise you here a little bit. I hope you like it, because
I like surprises.
The next big offtake partner you will bring in to TBN, I would like to bring them into the future episode of Move the Money.
Okay.
And talk about how they see it, so they get some nice exposure of what they do. So
Excellent.
You can add that to your...
Okay. Well, I hope it's someone who's watching us today.
Someone watching us today.
Yes.
The offer is on the table. You know where to find TBN.
Thank you.
And lastly, this is something I usually ask to all our people we have had on this series. That is, we're quite deep into the climate crisis. Now we have like a political craziness all over the place. Many countries, not just United States. Things are not moving in the right direction in the political space. And the clock is ticking. Are you positive that we will solve this climate crisis?
I have to
On a
admit,
personal level.
on a personal level, at a very high level, I don't see it in those terms. Change is the only constant. Everything is cyclical. The idea that we were somehow going to come to a peak of civilization with all the good things we like, which use resources, and then sort of keep that plateauing on forever, that for me was always a fantasy. So I don't see it in those terms. Now, what I do see is we have a number of choices about what the future looked like and how much control we have and how much we have to suffer. But I mean, so there's no such thing in my mind as a climate crisis, but I would just say that large chaotic systems don't behave as you think they're going to behave. B, are by definition pretty much unpredictable, and things are always changing. So I see it as a challenge that how can we best handle this? But I don't see, if you mean by solving it that we're going to somehow go back to pre-industrial conditions. No, not in any kind of time frame. No, I mean, maybe in a geological time frame, it might one day go back to pre-industrial, but I don't think in 150 years the world will be what it was like 150 years ago. I don't think there's any way that can happen, though.
I mean, solving it, making sure that the acceleration of the global temperature heating is under control.
Let's see.
And let's do everything we can on the table to make sure that we have a chance.
Absolutely.
Lastly, for our viewers that haven't heard about our Buy More Time campaign, you maybe wonder what this is all about. And that's a campaign we at We Don't Have Time launched at COP 29. That is all about that we have the solutions, as you have seen here. Here's a great solution to actually restore the Amazon. And if we don't do that, we know what's happened. But if we succeed in restoring it, we also know what happened. The biggest challenge with the solutions we have out there today is that we need them to scale faster. And in order to scale faster, we need money and we need time. Money, there is a lot out there. We just need to funnel it in the right direction. But I don't think that's enough. So we also need more time. And Buy More Time is a campaign where it's advocating for creating a framework globally to focus on cutting methane emission and other short-lived climate gases. And if we do that, we can actually lower the temperature in a much faster way compared to if we only focus on carbon. It's not either or. It's a low-hanging fruit to get more time to do everything else that we also need to do.
Absolutely.
Because the biggest problem with carbon is that it's stuck there for thousands of years if you don't remove it. But methane is only up in the atmosphere for about 12 years. So if we stop emitting methane, we get a cooling effect much faster. So we need to do both, but that's what the campaign Buy More Time is all about. So that's why you have it on our wall. Is it something you want to add? This is the only time to do it.
Understood. I think we focus very much on our potential, and this doing sales from my side, on our potential offtake clients. I would just stress we've designed this as a profit-making business. So for investors, there is return. That's the only thing I would say. This is not a philanthropy or a charity. We believe the only way to scale this, and the reason it hasn't scaled in the past, is it was not a profitable business where you can have an investment and a return. If there's no return, it's not investment, obviously. And whilst our main goal is to scale the restoration, this is also a real opportunity for a proper investment.
I totally agree with you. I think doing businesses for good is a way to scale things. If you're only a non-profit, you reach a plateau where it's hard to scale it further because you always need to get the donation money to get you going. That's needed. We need a lot of non-profit organization, but
Absolutely.
we need profitable organization, work with the non-profit and work with the ones that are not in the climate space and environment space to funnel some of their money to the solution makers like you. So I wish you a great success.
Thank you very much
for coming here.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure.
And see you next time.